The transport pod descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull scorched and battered from the journey through the void. Inside, Isabel sat shackled to the cold metal wall, her violet skin pale with exhaustion, her forearms bound tightly against her torso. Exile, that was her sentence. 3 cycles of exile on the primitive world called Earth. Among the species the Galactic Council deemed barely sentient. Her crime, questioning the Council's decision to harvest the developing world's resources. One voice of dissent, and they'd stripped her of rank, honor, and home. The pod crashed into a forest clearing with enough force to crack the hull. Isabel stumbled out, gasping in the thick, oxygen-rich air. The gravity was heavier than she was used to, pulling at her limbs. She collapsed to her knees, 4 arms splaying out to catch herself. Whoa, easy there. Isabel's head snapped up. A human male approached cautiously, hands raised in what she recognized as a peaceful gesture. He was tall, with sun-darkened skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. His clothing was simple, what the database called farmer's attire. "I'm Richard," he said slowly, as if speaking to a frightened animal. "You okay?" That was one hell of a landing. Isabel's translator implant kicked in, processing his words. She tried to stand, failed, and felt humiliation burn through her. "Stay back, primitive," she managed in broken English, the language uploading to her consciousness in real-time. Richard didn't stay back. Instead, he closed the distance and offered his hand. "Primitive, huh? That's a new one. Come on, let's get you inside, before the sheriff shows up asking questions." Against her better judgment and, perhaps, because she had no other choice, Isabel accepted his help. Richard's farmhouse was modest but warm. He settled Isabel on a worn couch and brought her water, which she discovered tasted surprisingly clean. She watched him move about the kitchen with practiced ease, preparing something that smelled unexpectedly pleasant. "So," Richard said, setting a plate of food before her, "you're gonna tell me why aliens are using my back 40 as a landing strip, or do I have to guess?" Isabel stared at the food, some kind of cooked grain with vegetables. "I am exiled. Punishment for ... double quotes, she searched for the word, ... disobedience. Disobedience. Richard sat across from her, his own plate in hand. "Must have been some serious disobedience. I questioned my superiors. I said we should not destroy a world for its minerals when people lived there." Her 4 hands clenched. "For this, they send me here, to learn humility among lesser beings." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Lesser beings. Ouch," but he was smiling. "Well, you're welcome to stay here until you figure things out. I've got plenty of space, and honestly, the company would be nice." Isabel couldn't comprehend it. "You offer shelter to an exile, a stranger?" "That's kind of what we do here," Richard said simply. "Or at least, what we're supposed to do." The first weeks were difficult. Isabel struggled with Earth's gravity, with the peculiar human customs, with the overwhelming feeling of being utterly alone. But Richard was patient. He showed her his farm, explained how he grew food from the soil, how he cared for animals that served no military purpose, but existed simply to exist. "Why do you do this?" Isabel asked one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. "This farming, it is inefficient. You could use automated systems." Richard chuckled. "Could, sure. But then I'd miss this." He gestured at the fields, at the chickens pecking in the yard, at the old dog sleeping on the porch. "I'd miss the connection to it all. The work means something because I'm part of it, you know." Isabel didn't know, but she wanted to. 3 months into her exile, everything changed. A human girl no more than 7 years old, wandered onto the property, lost and crying. Isabel found her first, and the child screamed at the sight of the alien. Isabel froze. Ancient instincts, warring with something new growing inside her. In her old life, she would have called authorities, filed a report, moved on. But Richard's words echoed in her mind. "That's kind of what we do here." Slowly, Isabel knelt down, making herself smaller. She extended one hand, then another, creating a gentle barrier between the child and the darkening forest. "Safe," she said softly. "You are safe." The girl's tears slowed. She stared at Isabel's 4 arms, then reached out to touch one tentatively. "You're pretty," she whispered. Something cracked open in Isabel's chest. Richard found them like that Talion and child, hand in hand, walking back to the farmhouse. He called the girl's frantic parents, who arrived with the sheriff in tow. But instead of fear or anger, they found their daughter laughing as Isabel used all 4 arms to create shadow puppets on the wall. "Thank you," the mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you so much." Isabel nodded. unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Word spread. The alien on Richard's farm wasn't a threat, she was a neighbor. People came with curiosity, then with friendship. They brought food, asked questions, shared stories. Isabel learned about human resilience, about how they'd survived wars and plagues and disasters, how they kept rebuilding, kept hoping, kept loving despite everything. She learned they weren't primitive at all. They were survivors. They were kind. They were family. When her exile period ended and the council's retrieval ship appeared in orbit, Isabel stood in Richard's kitchen, her 4 hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he'd taught her to love. "You could stay," Richard said quietly. "I mean, if you wanted." Isabel looked around the farmhouse that had become home, at the photos on the wall that now included her, at the community that had embraced her without hesitation, at Richard, who'd shown her what it meant to be truly civilized. She activated her communicator. "This is Isabel Tofran to Galactic Council ship. I am declining retrieval. I am requesting ... asylum." The council officer sounded shocked. Asylum on Earth, among humans? Isabel smiled, her forearms spreading wide in a gesture of absolute certainty. "Yes, they sent me here as punishment, but they gave me something greater than they ever could. They gave me family." Through the window she could see neighbors arriving for the weekly gathering, bringing food and laughter. The old dog barked in greeting. Richard squeezed her shoulder, his smile warm and proud. The council could keep their cold efficiency, their hierarchy, their judgment. Isabel had found something infinitely more valuable here on this primitive world. She'd found home,